Okay, so as I said, my name is Michael Sullivan, Business Development Manager on the West Coast here in Los Angeles for WindowMaster. WindowMaster, oh, I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. WindowMaster is a natural ventilation and automation specialist company. We specialize in natural ventilation and smoke and heat ventilation products. We are physically located in the US and solely manufacture out of the East Coast in North Wales, Pennsylvania. And yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of what I had because of our company here. So we're going to get right into this. Before we start, this is going to be about 20 to 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes. I want to get some extra time for questions at the end. Some quick tips and tricks before we begin. Make sure you are muted. Any other applications that are taking up bandwidth, VPN, email, etc., make sure those are off so we don't lose you. If we do lose you, we can fix the connection and jump right back in. And questions, as I said, please use the chat box for any questions as we go through this. Mia, my colleague, will be monitoring all questions during the presentation, and we'll have much more time at the end of this presentation. We're also recording this webinar, and this will be sent almost immediately, an hour after the live version. And we'll have some handouts in the handout tab on your screen that we'll also be sending in the email as well with product data and reference catalog for our current projects. So during this course, we'll be addressing the use of facade automation to provide natural and hybrid ventilation systems with associated installation requirements. Now, this is going to be a quick overview. It's not going to dive in deep, but if you do have any technical questions that I cannot answer and we cannot answer today, I will be able to answer those by going to our resources with that knowledge. So please be patient. I know you all will be. Our key learning points today are actuator installation methods, the aesthetics versus the installation methods, the relative benefits of the different methods. We'll do a quick overview of cabling. I know this is based more on glazing, but it's nice to know what the electricians are looking for just so you can kind of be on the same page as them, especially if you're a general contractor as well. And then an overview of WindowMaster's services and maintenance for installed actuators after the project's completion. So we will begin with the applications of the window and vent actuators. The first application is automated natural ventilation. This regulates the building's indoor climate by exploiting the natural forces of the exterior environment, also the thermal displacement within the buildings, and any exterior natural forces. So we use temperature sensors, CO2 sensors, wind stations, and weather stations to provide us information to the actuators on when to open and close the operable windows. This is working with the BMS systems or a BAS system that is supplied by the contractors. And as for mixed mode ventilation, this is the most common ventilation in the US. It's a combination of natural and mechanical ventilation. And this is when you have our systems in place to work with the mechanical ventilation, and the mechanical ventilation takes over when required by external conditions. Say if you are trying to control the comfort level and the wind picks up, or rain, snow, anything that changes your regulations within the building, the mechanical ventilation works with the BMS to talk to our systems to take over the windows, close or open the hardware. And as far as mechanical ventilation products, WindowMaster supplies natural ventilation solutions that can work with any mechanical ventilation products. So anything you are using, we can verify that it will work with any to most products, and we'll work with you to integrate those products as well. As far as smoke and heat ventilation, the UL 325 approved products are part of a UL approved smoke and heat design system. This removes smoke and heat from a burning building and keeps escape routes and access for fire services to areas free of smoke. The one consideration with heat and smoke is the only thing that works with UL approved products is that WindowMaster can only provide the positional feedback. So there's no more degree of opening angles, any other feedback in the US or UL approved products. We cannot provide more than just the open and close portion of that. As we keep moving here, the suitable types for automation, the typical awning and casement are typical mostly for commercial. You see a lot of awning and casement windows in commercial. Hopper windows you can see in a variety of projects. Skylights, mainly commercial or bigger buildings. And then with multi-unit residential, casement and parallel pop-outs are going to be the most suitable for those projects, as they are the largest opening sizes and most ventilation types for vents, which is going to really be more about comfort level and convenience for the residential occupants. And a quick note, with any width that is greater than 55 inches or more will need more than one motor. And typically with the pop-outs and casement windows, you tend to see 2 or more actuators per vent. All of our hardware is also ADA compliant, which is highly recommended in a multi-unit residential project, which is going to be, again, those casement and parallel pop-out windows. As far as vent preparation, glazing contractors, this is a big one. It needs to be done by glazing contractors or with the window manufacturers. So any prep work, we will provide these drawings, as you can see here. Pretty simple vent prep. Couple holes for our brackets. It's very simple. Couple holes to mark, and then install the brackets. But again, this needs to be done in the field or a glazing workshop, or if you can talk to the window manufacturer and have them work with us. The key is to have a great communication between trade to trade during this process, because we'll be doing these drawings for you as your subcontractor, but it needs to be communicated from glazing contractor to manufacturer with these drawings during production. And that could, we all know how manufacturers work, and sometimes things get missed, but if you keep in contact and have great communication, this can go very smooth for everybody, especially when it comes to concealed closers, which we'll talk about later in this presentation. So the installation methods and aesthetics. We're going to start talking about the simple and most cost-effective surface-mounted actuators. The next topic we'll talk about is surface-mounted actuators with a cover cap. So these aren't technically considered concealed, but they are concealed in a way. And we'll go through that a little bit. And our third subject is surface-mounted actuators with a custom color. That may be the longest slide I have here, so be patient with me on that one. That's a big one. And I'm totally joking about that, by the way. And then we'll finish up with concealed actuators and do a quick review of cabling considerations for glazing contractors and general contractors. So surface-mounted installation is going to be our cheapest installation method for minimal prep work. As you can see in this installation here. It's a simple mounting right on the surface, brackets installed on the non-operable portion of the window, and the chain actuator is set with the bracket on the operable side. These come in standard colors. We also, I don't have it listed here, but it comes in a gray, dark bronze, white, and black. It also comes in an anodized, an aluminum anodized. The considerations to have when it comes to surface mounted installation is it is visually nice. Well, actually, it's not great when it's placed at a window below 8 feet. You can see all the inner workings, and it is fairly, there have been a few issues where it is in reach of building occupants, so people can tamper with it, or if you're doing maintenance, it's easy to get to, things of that sort. But again, this is very cost-effective, time-saving, and low risk when it comes to installation. We move to the surface-mounted installation with cover caps for wood windows. As you can see here, it is somewhat notched in, so that is another thing with the cover caps. The glazing contractor needs to coordinate with manufacturers to create this cap. So it is on the glazing contractor and the manufacturer to create a cap. Here's the cap here, as you can see, and the wiring is moving into the wall as well. But on this side here, you can see, again, below, window sectional detail coordinated by manufacturer and installer. So this is an example of a window sectional that we received and then added our actuator to show the installation and final product. It does conceal the actuator out of sight and out of reach of the building occupants. But again, the consideration is that the glazing contractor must provide and design the covers. And that goes along with the next section we're going to jump into with the aluminum as well, which aluminum is a little bit easier. It's less vent prep, less machining for the profile, and easier to deliver. As we all know, one of our favorite things in the glazing community is brake metal. We love using brake metal to cover things. And that's what you can do with this installation. It's a simple mounting of the actuator. Cabling is set very nicely, and then a simple snap-on sill cover or even brake metal to match. Easy peasy. It's very simple, very easy to remove, very easy to access, and no real pressure on the glazing contractor when it comes to this installation. And now here comes the big slide that I was telling everyone about. This one's going to take, it's a very long-winded slide. Custom colors. We have every color you need. Whatever color you guys need, we can make happen. The consideration for this, and I like saying consideration instead of saying con, so it doesn't make it sound negative. It's still going to be a little negative, but it's a consideration. Any changes to the standard production carry a fixed changeover cost. So if you were to do only a handful of actuators in a custom color, it may cost quite a bit. But if you do a larger, we can give you, it'll be only a slight increase for these replacements. So again, surface mounted actuators, custom color, we can get any color, but it's going to cost a pretty penny, depending on your quantities and the overall production of these actuators. And now on to the fun one. Concealed actuators installed inside the frame. As you can see here, this is a really nice picture of a concealed closer. Again, it is a standard color, so that does minimize cost, which is really nice because you won't see it unless you're right there. It is concealed in the, it looks like a wood frame here, a sill. And the only consideration with these is you have to consider the time and installation hours, not the time and installation hours, I should say the time and the maintenance hours when replacing or troubleshooting these to get at the actuators or even the cabling is something to consider when you're quoting these projects. As far as cabling considerations when it comes to concealed actuators, it's aesthetically and visually pleasing, but there is a higher risk of cable damaging when installing the windows, and it does once again it limits the access to the actuators and cabling for future maintenance. And when I talk about the risk of cable damaging, it usually occurs during installation due to wiring and window frames already being installed before the actuator motor. So if you need to talk with the electrician, where's the wiring at? Has it been pulled through? Do I need to pull any extra wiring or pull any extra footage to put this actuator in? When I put the actuator in, when it's wired up, will it mess with the cabling, the coating on the cabling, the plastic sealing? Anything like that is very key to consider when doing the cabling considerations or installation of the concealed actuator. And as far as wooden frames, you have a lot less wiggle room when installing a concealed closer. So that's another thing to pay attention to or consider when you're doing these projects and quoting these projects, is to make enough time and take the time, which I know we all do in glazing, is make sure the cabling is sitting correctly and there's no issues for future maintenance when trying to pull that cable out, or even just the actuator. Vent preparation for cabling. I am fairly new to the vent preparation for cabling, so I'm going to stick to the slide because the slide knows best. It is good practice early on to consider where the actuator cable needs to go through, for instance, through the profile or surface mounted clips or containment, where the exit points are and what is it going into. That can be, you might have to drill, or this is more for the electricians, but something you glazing contractors should know as well. With the grommets and avoiding burrs when pulling cabling through, in case you're going back to do any maintenance or reinstallation or replacements, sometimes you have to wiggle that cable through to get a little extra working space, and you don't know unless you talk to the electrician what happened in this frame, what's going on with this frame after the holes were made and the electric hardware were pulled through. So you always want to recheck and back check everything that all the trades have done to these windows before considering replacement or maintenance on these windows. And again, you can see here that you have the 3-core flex to controls with the grommets and the clips. Here's some examples of clips that I've seen and we use for the cables. Sometimes they even use, I've seen brake metal used, where they kind of make a little brake metal bridge over the cabling, and it seems to work. From the projects I've seen, it works. So there's also that factor too. Our good friend brake metal for the glazing community. And cabling dimension considerations. This is mainly for electricians, but I know we have some architects and general contractors with us today. Glazing contractors, it's nice to know. But as you can see at the bottom here, this is an example of 4 actuators with 17 feet of cable each and a remaining cable length of 96 feet. So why is it those dimensions? Because we have tested with our MotorLink controller software that it is best for the functionality of all of our hardware, that it is oh man, I cannot get this out of my mouth today. There is a maximum of 164 feet between the MotorLink controller and the last actuator on the run, as you can see in our examples below. And that's a big consideration to have with the electricians, because if they place it more than 164 feet away, it does affect the actuators that are being put in, and it's going to make complications for everyone. You go back for maintenance, calling our tech company or our tech department, and just all around it can be tiresome and long-winded. Just just a consideration for you glazers. But a quick overview of what MotorLink is. I don't have a slide for this, but it is a handout, again, in this presentation that we will provide. So if you want to get those handouts with our reference books and the MotorLink, it will tell you more about this. But it is a data communication technology that provides improved and accurate control to functionality in the connection of controllers and automated ventilation hardware and our natural ventilation solutions. And last but not least, the technical services and maintenance that WindowMaster can provide for you in these products. I may need to get a few references and get back to you guys on a few of these things just to get some clarification. But WindowMaster Tech Services Department provides technical advice and assistance with shop drawings, wire diagrams, and after installation assistance. I need to get more clarification on what the terms are for that, but we also have, for more specific, larger projects, we have annual contracts separate from the project quotes to assist with long-term hardware assistance and maintenance, so that your customer doesn't need to call you every time something breaks. They can go directly to us, or you can contact us and we'll assist with getting that fixed. One maintenance, it's kind of a common sense. I left the common sense comment out of this last part here, but make sure that the main voltage is disconnected when cleaning or during maintenance or even installation. That's kind of common knowledge, but I thought I'd throw it in there just to have it in here, kind of as a reminder for everyone. And that's really it, everyone. I kind of sped through that. I don't even know what I said for most of it, but if you have any questions, here's my information, and we are going to open up for a few questions. I tried to make it short and sweet. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat, and I'll let you know if I see something come in.
Okay.
And then we can go through those. So please, everybody, share any questions that you have in the chat. While you're thinking of your questions, I do have a question for you. So Michael, say that a glazer buys, because their architect has specified in Division 8 that they need to buy an actuator that's custom color. What happens in the scenario if the glazing contractor, something happens to the actuator during the installation? They need to buy a replacement unit while they're still under contract for the project, and the one or the two actuators again are custom color. What happens in that scenario? You said it would typically be higher cost. Can they still buy an actuator that's one unit that's custom color?
Yeah, they can, and that's something they can contact myself about or anyone on our team about, and that's something that we can work with the manufacturing headquarters to get expressed over. And yeah.
Nice.
There's a lot more to it, but I can definitely look into more of that and get that out as well.
Nice. Something that I've heard glazers do as well is that they will, even though there's, let's say, 50 automated windows, they will buy for actuators of 55 units. Then they'll have 5 on stock, just the 5 to have on stock because they're custom color, so that they can quickly get replacements unit over while they're still under contract. So adding a few quantities for your buffer stock, I've heard, is also a good way to solve it. Of course, WindowMaster is always there to help, and I know you guys will stand ready. But I've heard a buffer stock is also something that's been used.
That was the word I had in my head, but it wasn't there.
It's okay. John's got a question I was going to ask as well if somebody hasn't asked it. But John Trumbull's question is, do you have recommendations for how many actuators can be controlled by each other? So how many actuators, I would assume he means per window, you can control together? How many can synchronize at maximum together? And correct me if
So,
I'm wrong about that question, John, but that's how I read your question.
so how many actuators can be controlled by each controller?
How many actuators can be controlled by each controller? Okay, so maybe per control panel, sorry.
Okay. So with our control panels, we have certain amps per the actuators, and we have control panels that have up to, correct me if I'm wrong, Mia, I'm still trying to remember all of this, up to 12 to 20 motor lines, or is it 10? But I believe it is up to 4 actuators per motor line. So we do have product data on our website, and there are actuator control panel product data that give you a whole list, which I can send over to you with recommendations on where the quantities per amp and per setup are included. But it really depends on the project and how many you're looking at connected to each controller.
That's exactly right, Michael. So how it's very project specific, however many zones that there are, how we're splitting up the controlled windows per zone. But the largest controller we have is that 20 amp version. We have a 10 also and a 6 that's just been released. But the largest amount, if we just say our standard actuators are 1 amp per actuator, that in theory would mean that we can do 20 actuators per controller. But as you say, it very much depends on the project's layout, the controllability wishes of the architect and the electrical contractor. So absolutely. Yes, glad we got that clarified, John. That was the exact question he was looking for. Fantastic. Thanks for your question, John. Another question I had, Michael, was what if a glazing contractor goes down the route with an architect to buy a concealed actuator? How does that, if the glazier also needs to replace that actuator while they're still under contract, how do they go about that? The unit's in the window. What do they also need to consider while they're under contract to get that unit out? What's typically done in that process?
So with that process, you have to look at the warranty of the hardware and the warranty with the manufacturer. If taking that actuator out is going to basically take away any warranty or wreck the framing itself or the hardware. Another thing is how is it installed? Where is it installed? What has to be taken off? Was that kind of your question?
Exactly. Yep. So what do they need to consider? Because you're right. It sounds like that's a nice way to go, and it is a beautiful look to get it all concealed in. But just some good things to consider when talking to the architect about that option. Well, what does the architect also is good to know if something happens during installation phase and the architect or the actuator needs to be taken out again. How does the glazing contractor help with that? What do they need to communicate back to the window manufacturer that the window manufacturer might also have concerns with? So it's definitely a good thing to coordinate, collaborate, and communicate about, architect, glazer, and window manufacturer, even though it is a beautiful solution.
And especially who's done the prep. So you really want to know who's done the prep and what they've seen to finish that process, or if the manufacturer did it, what did they do to prep for this actuator, and how can we get it out the easiest and simplest way without
Exactly.
damaging anything?
So Daniel Saavedra asked, can the actuators be installed on existing windows? Oh, great question.
Yeah, if we can get window section details at some point. Are you talking about concealed or surface mounted? Because surface mounted will be easy. So it depends on concealed. We would need to do shop drawings and work with the original manufacturer and potentially the original glazing contractor to get shop drawings and work through a design to make that work on the existing windows if it's concealed closers or concealed actuators. I went back to my glazing terms, talking about closers instead of actuators.
And then what about for if it's surface mounted and it's an already existing window, you know, it might also be an old window. We can't find the old vent preps. What does WindowMaster do in that scenario?
Ooh, that's a good question. I usually go to you guys for that question.
Typically, a good approach is that then we do our CAD designer will do what's called a measurement guide. So they'll send a one pager to ask the glazing contractor to measure specific dimensions, and then they will try their best to replicate the section profile in AutoCAD. It might not be the exact one because we can't find the original drawings of the manufacturer, but it'll have the most important details like where the brackets should go, the dimensions of that window seal, and then dictate in the drawing as well how should the actuator and the bracket fit on that more historic existing window. So that's where our sophisticated and exceptional CAD design team comes into play. That they help not only with new buildings and new windows, but can definitely do existing and renovation projects as well. Another great question, yeah, from John. So does WindowMaster offer motor cover shapes, or is using a custom brake metal the best way?
So as we said before, that's between the manufacturer and the glazing contractor. We do have things for screens for windows. So you can set up and have a screen. I can't think of the word right now. Screen angles. But as far as a cover, that's really going to be up to the glazing contractor and window manufacturer on how they want to cover that. I haven't seen any window cover or motor covers. Mia, have you seen any window or keep going back to window motor covers?
Not other than like a cover cap that you showed examples of, that wood and
Yeah.
that aluminum cover caps.
So yeah, I think from my glazing experience, brake metal could be a good interior. Yes, John, screen support. Yes, that was the word I was looking for. But for exterior, it would probably be a snap-on cover. You'd work with the manufacturer if it's exterior installation, which we don't have many exterior installation. But typically, brake metal would be the best choice.
Awesome. Another question I thought I had that might be something interesting for the audience to think about is what about, you mentioned that windows can have up to 4 actuators, so 4 units of actuators per window. But when does a glazing contractor know if their window should have more than 1 actuator?
So that is with when the width is larger than 55 inches. And I should have got this in there. I don't remember the weight requirements on the window. If you could maybe help me out with that one, Mia.
I think that also very much depends on the chain, the chain structure, so how strong the chain is. So depending on what chain actuator we would use. But you're right, the if it's an awning window, the thing to think about if it's awning and if your window is at or around 55 inches or more, then we typically start to look at recommending more than one actuator.
And we also have the Actuator Finder app on our website that can help you with that.
Yeah. There's a neat tool on our website called Actuator Finder where you guys can play around to see what type of actuator should you use and how many actuator units does your project need, and it's free. It's called the Actuator Finder. Peter asks, what are the relevant spec divisions containing the vent automation system scopes?
That is going to be Division 8, 23, 25, and 26.
Nice. Typically the 8, right, for the glazers?
Yeah.
And then
8 for the glazers,
other
and
ones.
Other ones for everybody else.
Yeah.
I remembered that one because I knew Peter would bring that up.
And then Daniel asked who normally preps the windows, so in parentheses, the holes for actuator installations.
So that is typically the installer, or the holes for the actuators. That could be either the manufacturer or the glazing contractor. Am I right in that one? Is that what holes we were talking about?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
But typically it's going to be the glazing contractor unless communicated with the manufacturer. And as far as cabling holes, that is also going to be the glazing contractor.
Nice. Anybody else have any questions? Maybe I'll give it a 20 more seconds to see if you have something you want to write in. I think we're good on questions, Michael.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I know you're all busy, so I tried to make this quick and painless. And I hope to speak to all of you soon. And again, we do have the handouts for the references of our current project or our past projects in the US and the motor link. If you have any other questions, my contact information is right there. And we'll be sending out a recording of this with the handouts shortly. So thank you all so much for your time.